Bonjour, buenos dias. I say bonjour because I have not eaten lunch, so it's still morning for me. Um, my name is Alfonso Carrillo. I am a senior architect, Edge Solutions architect at Open Nebula. I don't know how many of you know Open Nebula. Just a show of hands. Good, two, three. Okay, Open Nebula is it's a EU-based open source company. We do mostly orchestration and federation of infrastructure. We're a cloud solution, just like Jonathan mentioned a few minutes ago. Well, there's hundreds of applications right now, some of them very big, some of them very small. We're a smaller platform. And we've been in business since 2008, and we have offices throughout Europe and the US. We are funded by the European Union in a One Edge project. We do a lot of edge computing application solutions, and that's the main focus we have right now. Besides private clouds of the size of Akamai's or big gamer companies that use Open Nebula as their cloud orchestration and federation solution. Having said that, I assume most of us are familiar with edge computing, the new term right now. Well, in Open Nebula, we started working with Telefónica de España in 2016, the concept of edge computing. We actually completely virtualized and make a programmable network, the access network, the fiber optic access network, and it was based on, they used Open Nebula as the cloud cloud orchestration and manager to put all the open source cloud access network management solutions, the OLTs, the storage, and what they did is they brought to the very edge, to their central offices, a cloud, extended the cloud all the way to the neighborhood. And this allowed us to have latencies under 10 milliseconds. Actually, with Telefonica, we proved to have latencies of ping up, down, upstream, downstream pings of 1.5 milliseconds, so which is quite outstanding. So what we are doing now is we're trying to bring cloud computing and the capabilities of services very close to the net, very close to the end user, actually all the way to his neighborhood, and that will allow a lot of growth on all the publics will allow a lot of improvements, isn't it? We'll have low latency applications, improve user experience. What we proved that we could do is really customize the internet service too, so each customer could have his own way of setting up their internet in a way that he's inside the central office. He has all the cloud computing capabilities as it was part of his own network, without having to rely on an external cloud environment. We reduced data transfer and security, of course, because we had the data very close to the end customer, very close, so close that he could go in, actually walk to it and see where the data was stored. He doesn't have to rely on the public cloud, which is hundreds of miles or thousands of miles away. And we minimize vendor dependency. All the solutions, our solution is an open source solution. All the solutions that we've been working with are mostly open source. So it really minimizes vendor dependency, because you can use a platform like Open Nebula and move it to another platform that suits you best. One thing that we do is really, we are orchestration native. It doesn't matter the technology, the virtualization technology you are using, even if you're using Kubernetes, containers, KVM, vCenter, any technology you're using to virtualize, we can orchestrate, and we can communicate with it, and we can switch loads and transfer loads from one to the other. This allows us to foster really innovative solutions, but that's all that's edge computing, and we think that our view, my personal view, is edge and cloud are now one. You cannot separate and say, I have an edge solution, and it's not connected to the cloud, or somehow doesn't interconnect to the cloud. It's intrinsic part of the cloud, and that's why I say that, we're extending the cloud all the way to the neighborhood, all the way to your doorstep. What is the situation? What is the European perspective on all of this? Unfortunately, the use of cloud in Europe has risen very, very slowly. People don't, or companies or enterprises, and even individuals don't trust much the cloud, and it grows very, very slowly. European actors that are truly involved in providing cloud services is very small, very reduced. If I ask, how many know of a large cloud provider that is 100% European? Very little, isn't it? And if we ask who are the other ones, we really know AWS, Azure, Google, Facebook has a large cloud infrastructure, Alibaba has a large cloud infrastructure, but in Europe there's none. There is an investment gap, definitely, for some strategic reason. European governments and European Union and European enterprise decided that it wasn't worth to invest on cloud infrastructure, cloud services, European cloud services, and we have a real big gap. The $11 billion euros you see there is just part of what those companies invest annually on growing. If we have to start from zero, 11 billion is not going to take us there, unfortunately. And the years, time has no price. So, the European Union is really concerned, and our president, she's really put forward that we must have a strategy in Europe to come up with a sovereign cloud environment, sovereign data environment, even though, even more than that, being self-sufficient on most of these areas. So, there is a new industrial strategy. We have a unique opportunity. We must take advantage of it. I think the 80% of the data now processed relies or is in foreign hands, to say something, outside the sovereign capabilities of the European Union. And we think that 80% of that data can be brought to the edge and processed there. And not because being sovereign, but because the data that we want to treat and the speed we want to treat it at and the amount of data we have to process is very impractical to keep sending and processing all that data in hyperscale data centers or public cloud data centers. So that is a great opportunity as 5G grows, as IoT grows, to take advantage and bring those capabilities to the very edge. And if we do it with open source, the better. I cannot read very well. Okay, it says Europe can leverage its current strengths in industrial internet. Yes, we can, but it's going to take a humongous effort, as you're going to see right now in the 2030 European Digital Compass states that we have to, this is the decade to become fully paired with China and the US on our cloud capabilities, our own data sovereignty. But we have quite some hurdles to overcome. And the first one for me is skills. In the last 10, 15 years, we have lost a lot of IoT or IT skills. And we hear, the European Union points that we might need 20 million more IT expert people to overcome the gap. And that's quite a challenge. Quite a challenge because, as you might understand, it's hard to convince people to come out into the IT world when the IT dominants are not in Europe, are outside Europe. Then we have the digital transformation of businesses. Businesses are also lacking behind. We need to foster the acceleration of of digitalization of the companies, mostly on the small and medium-sized enterprises. Digitalization of public services. Yes, indeed we need. To come over here this morning, I had to fill in my passport, my ID, and also I had to fill a paper saying that I was coming here and living, and give this to the stewardess, and I guess when she gets off the plane, she just throws it in the trash can or something like that. But, you know, this time of age, my national ID should have all the records, all the data of what I have done and where am I going and how is it, you know, I don't need to fulfill all those papers. And then on secure and sustainable digital infrastructures, we see that there is a lack of infrastructure that is owned and sovereign by the European Union. But a good thing here I have highlighted is that the European Union is now, I mean, the European Commission acknowledges that we need to build around 10,000 edge nodes in the next few years, let's say till 2030. 10,000 sounds like a small number for all of Europe, but just building one and integrating it, as Jonathan says, is a pain. And to build 10,000, you know, when we started the project with Telefonica, they wanted to build 800. Thus far, they built 4. It takes a long while. It is an encompassing, it's an overwhelming task. So we need to get ourselves going. Some other points on the digital compass. I think the presentation is going to be published, isn't it? So you can read all this at your leisure. Definitely the COVID, the pandemic, even though it had this huge problems, and we just mentioned one person that passed away, and probably many others. So one of the good things that come out of this terrible pandemic is that we realize that how vulnerable the European Union is, because we are, you know, not self-sustainable on a lot of issues. You know, right now there's a scarcity of semiconductors, no cars, no TVs, no nothing. You know, also we don't have the skill sets to build these things, so we're realizing that, you know, we must foster European growth on these issues. Also, the European Union has come to understand that we must build and dedicate a lot of the recovery funds that the European Union is for the first time pumping to all the countries on becoming sovereign and build data communities. Europe's next generation cloud. This started back, as you can read, in 2020. All the European Union member states signed that we need to have a next generation cloud solution that is independent, that is sovereign, that allows us to maintain our independence from a strategic independence, let's say it, you know, from other continents or countries, and that we must rely on open source standards. That's something that the European and that the Commission is very adamant about. So we have, you know, you can read here all the signatory countries. European open source strategy, a little more than that. In the 2020, 2023, there was the idea or the push to build more on open source and cloud computing. So, you know, going over on this, you can see what, you know, some of our commissioners say about it. And let's go into some of the details of what's happening today in the European Union regarding all these initiatives. There is the EU Horizon Europe project, where OpenAbil actively participates on this. We have created the Sovereign Edge open source community, and there's the participants that are participating on this. Is just to build an open edge solution that is all the participants are open source. There is no big names here that are proprietary solutions. And I go furthermore. Here we don't have, these are all software-based. We have also implemented the solution in white label hardware infrastructure. And some of that infrastructure is also built here in the European Union by big ODM manufacturers, which most of them are Taiwanese, but they have factories here in Europe. So this is one of the programs that we are very involved in it. This is another major program. If you're not aware, this is just happening starting this very week. We're deciding which work streams are gonna be performed under this. This is 11 country strong initiative, all built on edge computing to provide an edge computing solution all the way from infrastructure to use cases, with tremendous funding from the European Union and from the 11 participating countries. This will, the idea is to build a cloud edge continuum, and that means that if we have a public cloud, data on the public cloud, and we need that data on the very edge, we can move the data and the workloads transparently from one place to the other. OpenAble already has that capability. We were able to work with the big hyperscalers and move the workloads from one to the other and still use our own capabilities of orchestration and federation, as well as using the customer's infrastructure. Another initiative, and this was started at March of this year, in June of this year, or March of this year, is the Alliance for Data, Edge, and Cloud. This is a big initiative from the European Union as well, part of the consequence of the COVID-19. And together with this, the sister program is Alliance for Semiconductor Independence. So Europe wants to start building semiconductors, something that we forego like 15 years ago. All the plants were moved outside of Europe. Now we want to bring some of them, and it's a huge investment. And last but not least, I'm sure you're very aware of Gaia X, another initiative, a little more encompassing, all 27 countries participating, very standard-driven, slow pace. I think IPCIE will be much faster, will move quicker. It's smaller countries, definitely work streams. But we're participating as well on this, and I encourage you to really take a look at Gaia X initiative and see what has to offer to enforces a lot of data sovereignty, data security, data capacities. And with that, I think I've covered most of it. Thank you. You're welcome. Any questions?
Hello, Alexandre Negadi, SaaS via for open source. I wanted to know whether you're working with those administrations that we've seen just before on the previous slide.
Yes.
The other one, pardon me. Yeah, the one that are upside here. All of them. I mean,
yes, definitely on IPC Cloud Infrastructure Services. Yes, we're working right now with the Spanish ministry, with the French ministry. Maybe Capgemini will join one of the consortiums. There is about 111 companies participating on this. And right now we're at the stage that each of the 11 countries is forming or selecting which work streams they're going to work on and with what strength. So we are positioned in the cloud edge continuum perspective.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes, John.
My question is about, as we talked before, it's about the complexity of that kind of program. I've been involved.
Since I know the question a little bit, I think you're referring to this.
Yeah, I mean the complexity of that kind of program. I saw in my past some really, I could say,
with lot of invest program, but they are. I say it's always complex, and I never know if there's already going to happen something really strong enough to
Yes.
compete with what North America does.
With the hyperscalers to compete with them. I agree with what you said. You have to start small. Baby steps, as Americans say, you have to start small. But at one point, you have to make your prototype, you have to your POD, but at one point the company has to make, or the enterprise has to make a decision to move forward. We cannot wait for the perfect solution. The biggest problem with open source solutions, like the ones we shown to Telefonica and proving with other companies, is that at the end they don't trust there's not a full trust on the open source solution, even though we use Linux, Canonical, whatever, and we use it every day in and day out, and they're open source. But when you move higher layers of that, there is companies doubt a lot if OpenAV is going to survive, if it's viable, what is the roadmap for the next 5 years. And when we have to tell them that the open source community is what keeps the product alive. It's not the company behind it.
Do you think it's about the trust of open source or more the trust of a well-seeing company? For example, when you look at on Microsoft, they could say, okay, we're doing a lot of open source on Azure, but the brand is Microsoft.
Yeah.
In fact, they don't really care about what they put. They just sign because it's Microsoft.
Yeah, now as it goes back a little bit with also, open source companies don't have the commercial and the marketing capabilities of Microsoft. Microsoft comes into this room and puts the business card in there, and it's Microsoft. I come in this office and I put the OpenAV business card there, and nobody might take it. Yeah, it's a matter of scale, but we have, that's something that if we really want to have edge cloud sovereignty, that's something that we have to, and we want it to be open source, that's something that we have to push forward, all of us.
Any other question? So thank you.
Welcome, anytime. Thank you.